Hello friends, James Stevenson back with episode 15 in my Tesla earnings forecast video review series, which is also a Breakfast with Loki episode if I can get him to eat. So we'll put his food in front of him and see if he eats. Let's check in with Loki, my co-host, here so that you can see his reaction. Okay, there's your food, buddy. And we'll see if he decides to eat some kibble instead of that piece of string he has in his mouth that he wrestled free from, I don't know, his blanket or a toy or something. Loki, what do you have in your mouth, buddy? He doesn't know. Alright, I'll tilt this back in case he doesn't move from Loki's spot there, but we will proceed with the content du jour. We've gone through all of the charts already, so the next thing we're going to hit is this, the income statement. So I always start off the first non-chart section with the P&L, which I think is what people are probably most interested in looking at of all the content that's in my detailed model. You can see the rows where we're starting here. Row 1167. So above this are all the rows where I'm figuring out how much revenue and how much cost of sales there will be. So, you know, literally I'm using 1165 rows just to figure out what these lines on the income statement are going to be, and then these just add those up. And actually there's another section, rows like 1800 through 2000, where I'm figuring out what the foreign currency translation impact is. That's not a foreign currency exchange impact. The difference between those two, I know they sound exactly the same. The exchange impact is literally we swapped out foreign currency for US dollars, or one foreign currency for another foreign currency, or US dollars for a foreign currency, and there was an impact from exchanging that money. So that foreign currency exchange impact hits here on the other income/expense net line. Where does foreign currency translation impact hit? All the rows. It's buried within all of these lines, because foreign currency translation impact doesn't have to do with exchange. It has to do with transactions occurring in foreign currencies and, you know, in the case of the balance sheet, you know, bank accounts having foreign currencies in them that aren't being exchanged for other currencies. But if you're going to report consolidated income statements for all of your multinational activities, you're going to have to translate those foreign currency denominated transactions into US dollars, and that's where these impacts come in. And you can see that noted as a memo item on this row for how much the gross margin impact was. So this was unfavorable, $289 million at the gross margin line in Q4. I'm projecting it'll be favorable, $140 million, because the exchange rates have moved since last quarter to this quarter. All right, so what do we have here? Well, this is 2022 here. So these amounts are actuals. And this is my forecast for 2023, and these are not actuals. That's my forecast. I thought that would be a pretty good way of showing this to you. Now, if you go through my Twitter forecast thread, you'll see more detail than this. You'll actually see the forecasts for 2024 and 2025 as well. That would be a lot of material to cover in a video. Maybe one day I'll do it. But probably okay to just let you know. I mean, people probably are most interested in what my forecast is for Q1. Hey, how bad is Q1 going to be? Not so bad. The gross margin percent line is going to get worse. So that's going to fall maybe 5 points from 23.8 to 19.0. That's what I've got here. I think that's going to spring back some in Q2 as Tesla makes more improvements and gets more production out of Shanghai. They had a lot of closures in Q1, limiting production from that most cost-effective factory. So in future quarters, not only will Berlin and Austin be ramping and getting more efficient, Shanghai should be able to produce more vehicles as well, and they come at a lower cost per vehicle, which is what's helping gross margin percentage here, among other things. So, I'm forecasting record revenues, record automotive revenue, record energy generation and storage revenue, record services and other revenue. Now you can see that doesn't come at a very healthy gross margin because the costs are almost as high as the revenues are. So not a very lucrative business, the services and other business. But Tesla is making some money on those, which beats the alternative, where you lose money. Then energy generation and storage ought to be producing a lot more profit by the end of this year than they were at the beginning of the year if they can ramp up production from the Lathrop facility of Megapacks, which are a good product that's going to have improving profitability the more they can take advantage of economies of scale, producing a lot of those per day. So I am assuming that gets better throughout the course of the year. Then, what else do I want to say about this? All right, so that gets us to the gross margin line. So total gross margin dollars will take a step back in Q1, I think, from where they were in Q3 and Q4, but not too bad. Still over $5 billion. That's close to where it's been recently. If you look back over the past 4 quarters, $5.1 billion of gross margin is about average over the 12 trailing month time frame. So not a record there, but there will be a record at the top line. Again, owing to some inefficiency from not getting as many production weeks in Q1, and then the price cuts not helping matters. So you're still shipping lots of units, record number of units being shipped. So your costs are still pretty high, cost of sales. But you're not getting as much revenue for them at lower prices in Q1. We've already seen some of that reverse, though. For Model Y, prices have gone back up a little bit. Tesla will need to honor some of those sales at the previous low price in Q1, though, and that won't help. But future quarters ought to be better. Then for research and development, $839 million is my forecast here. That's more than most of the last 4 quarters. $1,072 million of selling, general, and administrative costs. That would be an all-time record high. So those costs continuing to rise as Tesla, staffs more administrative positions globally. No restructuring and other. I've got that forecast at 0. 0 is a good guess on this line some quarters when there aren't layoffs or Bitcoin impairments. So $1.9 billion worth of total operating expenses, leaving income or loss from operations. So operating profit, $3.2 billion. That's pretty close to where it's been over the past 4 quarters. Lower than 3 out of those 4, but better than Q2 of last year, which was the last time Shanghai had so many weeks of production missing. With operating margin of 11.9%. That's the worst in the trailing 4 quarters. 11.9, not that great, but 17.1 would be a lot closer in Q2, and then records before the end of the year, 20.3, 22.8, again, as Austin and Berlin ramp up more production, get better economies of scale, become more profitable. Tesla can get some expedite costs, some overseas shipping costs out of the system, and that'll make them more profitable as well. Then for interest income, record high here. We've seen Tesla invest more in higher interest rate, probably, treasury bonds or T-notes, those sorts of things. Interest expense lower than it's been before because Tesla has been paying down their debt. They have almost no debt left. Other income / expense net, which is where you would see currency translation impacts. So I've got a little bit of that planned here. Tough wildcard line, hard to know what it's going to be. Leaving EBIT, earnings before income tax, of $3.4 billion here, which is pretty good under the circumstances. You take really deep price cuts. People could be forgiven for expecting your profit would drop to zero or something if they were just doing back-of-the-napkin math. I'm not doing back-of-the-napkin math. I'm doing the most detailed forecast I'm aware of anyone doing. And I've got $3.4 billion worth of EBIT planned. Then for provision / benefit for income taxes, I've got about $300 million worth of income tax expense here, which is pretty similar to what Tesla has been paying recently. This does include some more of the deferred tax assets Tesla has been carrying for a few years now. We don't know how the deferred tax asset is going to materialize on the income statement. I think what we're going to see is just a lower amount of income tax expense on this row than otherwise would have been shown by Tesla without it. So if you think these numbers look a little small relative to the amount of EBIT, that's what's going on. Is there ought to be some relief in here from either the deferred tax asset or the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act benefits, or both, keeping these numbers low relative to, I don't want to say competitors, but relative to companies that aren't producing lots of batteries and electric vehicles and solar panels and other products that have benefits earmarked under that bill. Then we've got net income after tax, $3.1 billion. That's pretty good. You look back at the trailing 4 quarters, and that's a solid quarter with a little bit of net income loss attributable to non-controlling and redeemable non-controlling interests, I think is what that says. Leaving GAAP net income of $3.081 billion. That's my forecast for Q1. Mind the gap, GAAP earnings. So those GAAP earnings per share would be 97 cents basic or 89 cents diluted. And I did break out a row here for how much deferred tax asset I'm flowing through on the income tax expense line. And that's the 21 cents that we saw actually come through in Q4. That's a lot less than I forecast. I forecast 45 cents, and we got 21 cents. It wasn't called out in the investor letter. You had to go digging through the 10K to find that. But it was called out with this much left to be called out here. So another 36 cents worth in total in 2023. I'm forecasting that Tesla will take all of that by the end of Q3, but it's only a guess that this is the distribution of how they will spread those benefits, and I expect to be wrong on this line, but I am forecasting something that I think is reasonable. And probably that is a good line to stop on And I will pick it back up from here in part 16. But I guess Loki decided never to come over and try his breakfast. Buddy, you didn't want to try any of your kibble? You didn't even want to try one little kibble? No? Alright, buddy. Well, if you've enjoyed today's video, click the like button. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, why not go ahead and subscribe to my channel? And click the notification bell if you're interested in getting alerts whenever I post fresh content. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon or by joining my YouTube channel, especially my executive producers, Kathy Kitchler and Halter Ferguson Financial. And I'll see you in the next one.